in India and the world, breaking the glass ceiling would have been quite a tough time because it was so male-dominated. What did you do? How was it when you joined industry? Did you find these kind of challenges at that point in time? And today, seeing so many women entering the corporate world, what is your advice to them? How do they manage these challenges?
Thank you very much, first of all. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Okay. Okay, so that's many questions rolled in one. So I'm dating myself, of course. I started working in 1977, actually 1980, because then I took a break and I went and pursued my studies. So when I joined Cadbury's, I was the first ever executive to join Cadbury's who was not a man. The biggest challenge for the HR people was, which bathroom do I use? Because at that time, you had, restrooms for men, which were divided into managers and other staff. But for women, there was only one restroom. I say this a little bit, in jest, basically really to say that, it wasn't, in my batch, for example, when I did my MBA, there was 10% women and the rest were men. The same was true of the AIIMS and so on. Things have changed, but from my point of view, not enough. We're talking about 26 to 30% is the ratio of women in management institutes. I'm associated with a lot of companies. The IT companies seem to be doing the best. But even there, we've got a 30% ratio of women to men. So the good news is things are changing. The better news is that all of us can be part of the change. So you asked me a question in terms of, how do you deal with this? The only way I know how to deal with anything is that, your work has to speak for itself, so your gender becomes irrelevant. I think the whole debate on gender has to give way to a debate on competency. Correct. And the reason I say that is that, whoever you are, whether you are an IT professional, an academic, a doctor, or whoever, what matters when you're walking through that door is your track record, your academic credentials, your attitude, your leadership skills, your attributes, all of those things matter. Gender actually doesn't come into the equation, and somehow the narrative has got so overtaken by gender that we tend to overlook the competency part of it and give too much emphasis to gender. Now, I know we've just gone to Chandrayaan and, suddenly we are hearing about all the women in ISRO. And my question is, why didn't we hear about these women earlier? So there are opportunities, there are pockets. I think all of us, if you desire to be a professional, there should be nothing to stop you from being the professional that you want to be. I understand that the ecosystem plays a big role, your families play a big role, where you work plays a big role, people you work with play a big role. But I think the biggest role is played by us as individuals. And here I'm talking to the men as well as to the women, because that ecosystem has to be an inclusive ecosystem. It can't be favoring women, neither can it be favoring men. So I think if we in our own way are determined, if we change the narrative, if we allow our work to speak for itself and not anything else, only then we will see a big shift and change.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very insightful. Vinita, most of these kids sitting here today, in a couple of months, will be looking at campus placements. And often when I'm at campus teaching, there's always this debate between getting a job or do I look at a career? And I think it's very important for people to look at a career because there's so many opportunities and not hop from job to job. So my question to you is, what is your advice for these young students? How do you, at this point in your life, start building the blocks for a very, very successful career vis-a-vis jumping from a job to job? Is there a difference, or do you think that happens naturally, or can it be planned? And your experience in that, how did you build your career and become so successful?
You know, I think this is the old-fashioned way of thinking, which is you work hard at whatever you decide to do, you excel, and that's how you grow in an organization. And I know we make a distinction between jobs and careers, but at the end of the day, I really think what is important is to do something that you really like to do. Because if you are chasing a job, if you're chasing, big remuneration and so on, but your heart is not in the work that you're doing, your mind is not fully engaged, then in my experience and in my opinion, you can't excel, you can't do a great job of what you're doing. And you've got to distinguish yourself by letting your work talk for itself, and also how you conduct yourself. That's equally important. But this whole thing between a job and a career actually becomes a little bit irrelevant. Because when you say, I am going to pursue what I enjoy doing, what I like to do, and if I excel in it, and you're open to opportunities, I had not imagined the kind of career I ended up having when I started working. In fact, I wanted to join the Indian Foreign Service because I wanted to travel around the world. And, a cousin of mine came after I'd got admission for my MBA and said, why don't you do an MBA and you can sit for the Foreign Service exam after that? So that's how I got into an MBA. And what happens, before you've graduated, you've got a job. And so, off went the Foreign Service, and I joined industry. And, then I moved countries, I moved continents. I didn't move that many jobs. I had 3 long stints in 3 very iconic companies. And like I tell everybody, I've sold everything that is brown and sweet, from chocolates to Coke to biscuits. But I really think that don't think about your designation or your title or your money. All that will follow. That is a consequence of your work. It is not the driver of what you do.
Wonderful. So you said you wanted to travel the world, and I can see that you have traveled the world. I mean, you've practically left no continent apart. I think it's important for you to share some experience of what has been the interesting facets of working in different countries in terms of culture vis-a-vis working. I mean, you ended up working in India, but you came with that global experience. What were the pros, what were the cons? If people get these opportunities, what to look for as they move to different countries, different markets, different cultures?
I think all of you live in at a wonderful time when the world is almost fungible. There are so many people working outside of their home countries, whether it is India, whether it is Africa, whatever it is. When I first went abroad, that was to work, was in 1984. There were very few people, and especially in marketing, who went outside of India to work. And my first job overseas was Cadbury's, and then subsequently I worked for Coca-Cola. With Cadbury's, I worked in the UK, I went to Nigeria, I went to South Africa. Then with Coke, I was in Atlanta, then I moved to Santiago in Chile. So I literally lived in the Southern Hemisphere twice, and across, 5 continents. I think the biggest thing that working outside of your comfort zone does is that it really challenges what I would call your adaptive skills. You cannot be successful in another culture or another environment unless you are empathetic towards that culture and that environment. And there are little things that make a big difference. So, for example, when I worked in Nigeria, and the US is in many ways very transactional. You want to get some information, you pick up the phone, or now you send a message, and you say, I'd like to get updated on whatever it is. So I went to Nigeria after I had worked in the UK, and I was the director of marketing and sales. So on Monday morning, I would pick up the phone and ask my general manager sales what what the numbers were like. And I was told that you don't do that in Nigeria. You have to ask about how's the family, how's the weekend, how's the cat, how's the cow, how's the everything, and then get to. And these are little differences. You know, when I went to work in Santiago in Chile, I was attempting to learn Spanish. There was a very dear colleague of mine who I was taking over from, who was leaving. And I took the trouble to actually speak in Spanish at the farewell. And I got more acceptance by that one gesture, because people really felt that I was trying hard, or I was giving it a good shot to actually become as local as a foreigner can possibly become. So I think living outside of your comfort zone, if you're a person who is curious, is fantastic. Because, you know, what I learned was not about doing better business. What I learned was different cultures, different histories, different geographies, different ways of living, the opportunity to explore the world. And I think all of those things actually end up enriching you. So it's not just, you know, attention to work, because, you know, the more enriched your life is, the greater is the contribution that you can make. So I would say take any opportunity that comes your way, which makes sense for you. And the other point I want to add is that just because someone else has done it doesn't make it right for you. You know, we are all temperamentally very different. My temperament is to explore. I have a sense of adventure. I like to do different things. But if you're not that kind of person, then what I did, for example, may not work for you. You have to choose what works for you temperamentally. You have to choose what gives you joy. You have to decide where you want to spend your time. And once you're clear on that, then, you know, like somebody said, pick up something that you like to do and you will not have to work a single day in your life. And I think that's, if somehow we can get to that, that's great.
That's great. So you officially hung up your corporate boots in April 2014, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I have not. I've only hung up my operational
boots. So
I'm still very involved.
Yeah, so therefore the question is very relevant to that. What keeps you motivated and driven? What has, what is, and what perhaps will be? So, and thoughts for, you know, lessons in life too. You know, this whole drive, and you're still doing it and you'll continue to do it. So what has been that one thought, two thoughts that kept you going for all these years?
You know, so the decision to leave the corporate world, I mean, you know, I worked till I was 58, and, you know, 58 was the retirement age, and, you know, I wanted to do other things. I had already, when I was in my full-time role in Britannia, I was already an independent director on several boards in India as well as overseas. I was already doing work with the UN on nutrition. I was chairing the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. And what I realized was that there is so much out there to learn. You know, I'd been a corporate executive for 38, 39 years. And yes, it was exciting to see the numbers at the end of every quarter. And, you know, but that also becomes a routine. You know, you have your analyst calls, you present to your board, you do your town hall. And it was great. I enjoyed every moment of it. And I would do it again. But I would also leave when I did. Because what I realized was that there is a vast world out there. I was interested in other domains, and that is why my choice of boards was not to take on, you know, an FMCG board, but to learn about domains I didn't know anything about. So it was, you know, connected. So it was Syngenta, it was Bunge. You know, I'm currently on the board of Cognizant because I wanted to learn about technology. And the thing with boards is it's not a hobby. It is a serious commitment, you know, if you want to really learn about the business. And I think boards benefit from the experience of, you know, individuals who've run companies in other domains. So it works very well for both the full-time executives as well as the non-executive board members. So for me, it was really an evolution into the next stage of what I wanted to do. And, the way I think about it is, when you're working for one company or in one business, then it's like, to use an analogy from photography, it's like a zoom lens and you're looking very closely and very critically at that one area. But what I'm doing now is, taking a wide-angle lens and seeing a bigger landscape, seeing more opportunities, more points of connection, and therefore, different ways of contributing, but a lot of different areas to contribute.
Wonderful. I think that brings us to the close of our 20 minutes, and we have 8 very, very young, smart panelists who have 8 questions for you. So I think I'll open it up to the panelists on the stage. So they'll have more questions for you. So who's the first one? Who goes first? Sorry? Okay, please. I think you please take a mic there and you all pass it down. Please introduce yourself and then ask. Keep your question short and to the point.
You can take.
Hello. Myself Sagar Das. I from Institute of Engineering and Management. Thank you for giving me this, sharing your experience. And this session is much more inspirational for us. And as you are the member of the SU and as a nutrition, you providing maternity and child health improvement. So, ma'am, my question is basically that how the government should take initiative for the nutrition for betterment of an individual to the peoples and how it is work, ma'am.
So the government already has several schemes and programs which address nutrition. So in theory or conceptually, we've got a good infrastructure for nutrition. Ironically, it hasn't delivered the kind of results it ought to have delivered, if everything was being executed the way it's supposed to. So very quickly, I'm sure all of you know, there is the ICDS scheme, which operates through 1.4 million Anganwadi centers, looking at the needs of 0 to 6 years for children and pregnant and nursing women. There is the midday meal scheme that feeds 120 million school children. There is the public distribution scheme, but that's essentially, as I see it, it assuages hunger. It doesn't do that much for nutrition, though there are some nutrition initiatives embedded in that. For example, the micronutrient fortification of rice, which goes through the public distribution system that caters to about 800 million people. So there are those government schemes. I think people sitting in this auditorium know enough. You are responsible for yourself. There's a lot of information available on nutrition. There are some initiatives that are underway right now through the CII National Committee of Nutrition together with the UNICEF. And one such initiative is workplace nutrition, so which is providing healthy alternatives to your workforce, but more than that, actually educating your employees on what are good nutrition habits. So there is a long way, unfortunately, we still have to travel when it comes to nutrition. But I think if each one of us makes ourselves responsible for our own nutrition, and then, wherever you have the opportunity to work on programs and make sure that some of those which are already structurally in place are better executed.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, sure.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Monisha Ganguly. I am from AIIMS Institute of Engineering and Management. You have recognized, hello?
Yeah.
You have recognized at several national and international FUNAP and also won awards for your various contribution to business and society. My question is to you, how important do you think are awards and recognition in one's life?
Sorry, how important?
How important do you think are awards and recognitions in one's life?
Well, they make you feel good, at least temporarily. I think rewards and recognition, if it comes your way, it's great. But you know, that's the way I feel. I mean, you don't work to get a reward. You do good work and, you know, that's recognized and then you get a reward. And I said, you know, it makes you feel good at least temporarily, but, you know, then it becomes part of what you've accomplished.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Pass the mic down next.
Very good afternoon, madam. First of all, thank you so much for sharing all that wonderful information with us. I'm Rajesh Gupta from Future Institute of Engineering and Management, Kolkata. And my question is, as most of us are already aware of the fact that under your direction in Britannia, the company almost tripled in revenue, which is a great phenomenon. So my question is like, what were the strategies you had taken, and also what was the role of the competitors during that times?
Well, the role of the competitors is always to keep you on your feet, which we recognized and we did. You know, from a strategic point of view, it's actually, you know, the world of fast-moving consumer goods is quite simple. You know, I can say that all of us want to sell more to more people more often at, you know, at more margin. So it's actually the little things that make the big difference. So it's not some huge, big strategy that, of course, we took some initiatives on saying, how can we actually put better nutrition into biscuits? Britannia was the first one to start micronutrient fortification. We created public-private partnerships. This is long before CSR and ESG were even mandated. We worked with people like Akshay Patra and the Nandi Foundation to supplement the midday meal that was being given, you know, with specially formulated biscuits. And actually, our study partner in the initial stages was the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, their community health thing, where we, you know, we worked with the pediatricians there and so on to say, okay, how much iron? One of the things we wanted to look at was, you know, reduce significantly iron deficiency anemia. And biscuit is a great carrier for micronutrients, and our, you know, our inspiration in a way came from the World Food Program, where WFP, whenever there is a calamity or a natural disaster, one of the things that they have is that they drop these calorie-dense and nutrition-dense biscuits. And the reason for that is quite simple. You open a packet and you can eat it. You don't have to cook it. You don't have to go looking for water. So that was our inspiration, and those are some of the things we did. So strategy in all cases is nothing but the ability to convert consumer insight into a commercial proposition from a business point of view. And, you know, then it's the hard work of every day. You've got to make sure that, you know, you're available, your packages are right, your prices are right, and, you know, that's true of everything.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. First of all, thank you so much for giving us your precious time. You are leader for us. My name is Ritipriya Bandopadhyay. I'm from Institute of Engineering and Management. As I said before, you are leader for us. My question is, what is that one quality you think a leader should have to pose to be successful?
Just be yourself. I think authenticity is the quality, I would say. You know, I think it was Oscar Wilde who said, you know, be yourself because everybody else is already taken. And, you know, the reason I say this is none of us need to emulate anybody else. We can be inspired by other people. We can be, you know, motivated by what they do. But I think one essential quality of leadership is really to be true to yourself. And, you know, once that happens, then that is what gets you to do your best work. You know, it's not about being a rah-rah leader. It's not about being the best debater. It is not even about, you know, getting the highest marks. But I do think leadership is about authenticity. And equally importantly, I feel leadership is about taking ownership and responsibility for your actions and the results of your actions. And, I will take this opportunity to make a distinction between leaders and leadership. Leadership is a verb. It is behavior. It is what you do. It's not what you say. It's not what you promise. It's what you deliver. And I think, irrespective of where you are in the hierarchy of an organization, you can demonstrate leadership qualities. As a management trainee, I can demonstrate more leadership qualities than perhaps some leaders with, big titles like vice president or president or chairman demonstrate. So it is about what you do. It is about how you do what you do. And I think it is about the genuineness and authenticity with which you do what you do.
Good afternoon, ma'am. First of all, thank you for sharing your journey with us. Ma'am, I'm Vinita Bali from Future Institute of Engineering and Management. My question is, if you could go back in time, is there anything you could have changed or could have done differently throughout your business journey?
No, throughout my business journey, no. I think, you do the best that is possible with the information you have available at that stage. Now, in hindsight, some mistakes you have made or other things look like, you shouldn't have done those. I think it's important to debrief both your success as well as your failure and learn from both of those. But from a business point of view, you go in there and, as I said, with the information available at that time, you try your best to make the best decision. Of course, you learn in hindsight, and of course, those learnings in hindsight should actually be an input into what you do differently going forward. But, not from a business point of view.
First of all, thank you so much, ma'am. For your valuable time. Myself, Shadin Dotto, from Institute of Engineering and Management, Kolkata. So, ma'am, my question is to you that as you have worked with some leading FMCG companies around the world, so what advice or suggestions you want to give to someone, a fresher, who wants to make their career into FMCG?
My only advice is, if that's what you want to do, go in there and play your best game. There's really no other advice that I can give. There are no secrets of success. Frankly, I think the only secret of success is, doing with energy and, with the best spirit, what you're capable of doing every day. And, that is what creates success. There is no one mantra that, unfortunately, I can give to you or anybody else. The only thing I can say is, do what you like to do, enjoy your work, and that is how you will give it your best. And if you give it your best, then, success will follow. So don't chase success. Let success be the outcome of what you do, not the purpose for doing what you do. And I think that's very important. And don't be dejected by failure. We've all had failure. We've all had failure. I mean, the number of new products I've launched that have not been successful, I don't take it as my personal failure. I take it as a learning. And if I've learned from that and if I've done things differently, that's great.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am. First of all, thank you for giving us your valuable time. And my name is Joita Jana. I am from Future Institute, Kolkata. My question is how you face difficulties in your initial stage in your career?
Face, or how did you overcome those difficulties?
Overcome or face?
If, with an example or something, if you could share.
Frankly, when you ask me about difficult, I can't think of a difficulty I faced, in my career. Now, either I was very lucky or too naive, but, I don't know what you call a difficulty in your career. There are personal challenges. For example, I decided to come back to India after 18 years of working overseas because of personal reasons, my mother had a stroke. And I flew down from Atlanta to see her. And on the way back, I decided that I was going to move back to India because I wanted to spend time with my parents. That was a personal challenge. I made the choice, and I have no regrets about the choice I made. But in my career, were there any difficulties? I can't think of any, honestly.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Namonita Modok, and I am from Future Institute of Engineering and Management. My question is, what is your passionate about and interest in other things outside of work?
Nice. That's a good question because, we can't only be talking about work. So, right now, apart from being on boards and doing some work in the area of nutrition, one thing that I have been very passionate about is the performing arts, which includes classical music, dancing, theater, and so on. So I do spend my time doing some pro bono work for artists or art institutions, and I enjoy those greatly. I was a student of classical music and dance, but all of us do that, and we give it up for a variety of reasons, primarily because we are pursuing a professional career that makes it difficult. Because if you, if you want to be a good artist, then it can't be a hobby. Then it has to be more of a full-time commitment. But I'm very passionate about the performing arts, and I do think that I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. We keep talking about people who are, depressed or, not as happy as they should be. Mental issues is a big one. And I'm saying, if only we exposed ourselves to the joy of the performing arts. You go to whatever you like, if it's a film, if it's a play, if it's classical music, folk music, puppetry, etc. When you see a great work of art, it uplifts you, it rejuvenates you. And I think, one way I have always found to uplift myself is to listen to a good piece of music, watch a concert, see a good play. And, it's great. For me, it's worked brilliantly.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think that's a very, very important point because there's a saying, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And it's very important to have a passion in life. And Vinita, often when I meet young students on their CV, I find when they talk about extracurricular hobbies, reading, listening to music. And I want to tell these young kids, and if you'll agree with me, a hobby is something you passionately pursue. If you like arts, if you're into classical music, you have to keep. Not I heard classical music when I was 15 years old. I read a book in class 12, sir, but I've not had time after that. And therefore you must have that. So do you agree with that?
No, I completely agree with that. I actually feel that, to actually be well-rounded, I think one has to have interests outside of whatever career choice you make. Now, some careers are very, very demanding. But even then, almost everybody I know, who's done well in what they've done, have not only single-mindedly pursued one thing. They're interested in a variety of things. And if you're interested in a variety of things, you do find time to do that. I feel I'm far more productive if I take a break and just, walk for 15 minutes listening to music as I'm walking. I can come back and I'm a lot more focused than if I were to sit in front of my computer trying to figure out something on my own. So, and whatever works for you. If I used to be fairly active. I mean, I was a tennis player. Before that, I played squash and racquetball. So I think it's good to involve yourself or engage yourself mentally and physically, in some activity that charges you, it rejuvenates you, it refreshes you. And I think that's very important.
So we've done well with time, and I think we have around 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. So I'm going to open up the questions to the audience. So can we have some hands up so we can, yes, the gentleman right here in front. Please introduce yourself and address your question.
Actually, these lights are completely blinding. We can't see anything.
Can you see? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. It's an honor and privilege talking to you. I am Akashdi Bhattacharya, and my question to you is how to reach the state of self-actualization, or what should be the proper definition of self-fulfillment?
What should be the definition of?
Definition of self-fulfillment.
Self-fulfillment. Just be happy every day. Do something you like to do, and don't worry about anything else.
Next question. Yes, the gentleman right here. Right down.
There's a hand here
Oh,
in the third row.
yeah. Sorry, that's a lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm so sorry, I couldn't see. The lights were blinding.
Good afternoon. Am I audible? Yes. Good afternoon to everyone sitting in the panel and to the audience as well. My name is Shweta Singh, representing Institute of Engineering and Management, Kolkata. So we have talked about women empowerment, and since you are working from 1980s, probably you have gone through some stereotypical comments that would have act barrier. And I think, yes, things are changing right now, but still we have people who have narrow mind, and they try to pull us back. And these comments act as a barrier, because I have faced a lot of comments, and I'm sure many women sitting in this in the audience have faced as well. So how did you deal with those, and how would you suggest to all the women sitting over here to deal with those comments which really pull us back and pull us our motivation, demotivates us and pull us back?
You know, you've raised a very important point, and, you know, I wish I could give you a very rosy answer. The fact still is that it is an unequal world, and I don't want to, you know, just imagine that we're living in this wonderful world. In fact, a very depressing statistic from the World Economic Forum was around the world, if we continue the way we are continuing, then it'll take 160 years to get gender parity. Now, you know, keep that on one side. We've got to live our lives, you know, with dignity. We've got to live our lives, you know, the way, with respect. And I think demanding and commanding that respect, to a large extent, is dependent on us, but also is dependent on the society around us. And I am glad that this is a mixed audience, and the message I want to leave with everybody here is young men and young women. You know, men need to respect women. You know, whether those women are your sisters, your mom, your spouse, anybody else in the family. And I think out of that, you know, mutual respect, you know, grows a certain way of behavior. Now, it could be utopian on my part to imagine and say everybody is going to behave really well. I think my advice to all the women in the room is, do not, and it takes a tough mind to say that, to believe in that, don't let flippant comments distract you. You asked me how I dealt with it. I frankly ignored those comments because they're not worth spending your energy on. They're absolutely not worth, you know, fretting about. If there is, and I sit on boards where there are, unfortunately, whistleblower complaints of, you know, behavior in the workplace, which is not becoming of the workplace, those have to be dealt with, you know, with seriousness, with, you know, with promptness, and with decisiveness. So I think we are all part of an ecosystem where all of us have a role to play in that ecosystem. people who are in positions of power and authority have to learn to use that power and authority to ensure that it is an equitable workplace, that it is an equitable academic place, that it is an equitable world that we are striving for. It's not going to happen in a hurry. We see news every day about the way, women are treated, minorities are treated, and we don't have to stand for any of those. So I would say, personally, whatever you can do, all of us should do. If you're a woman, hold your own. Don't be bullied. Don't, as I said, I simply ignored. However, if there is somebody that is stepping, beyond a certain limit, then it takes a lot of courage, but do have the courage to speak up. Certainly in the corporate world now, there are good systems, practices, posh committees, etc., and the good companies take those on very seriously. But my message is really, if anything you would take away, is to the men in this room, in addition to the women in this room, you have to learn to respect and treat everybody, including, people of other genders, with generosity, with empathy, with understanding, and with respect.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a satisfactory answer. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but I have to be cognizant of time, and I think there's another wonderful speaker waiting to take over the session after this, so we have to be respectful to his time and our time as well. I think this has been a wonderful, wonderful session. I think the last answer kind of sums it up. Vinita Bali, in my mind and in my words, is what she is because of the sum of her experiences. And I think what she wanted to convey to all of you today, if I were to sum up in one sentence, is that your life is the sum of all your experiences. It's in your hands, it's your choices, and therefore take those choices, make those decisions. There is no hard and fast rule, there is no rule book, there's no great magical wand that will tell you do this and this will happen. You will make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. There will be failures, take that as a learning, don't take that as something that puts you down. You will face obstacles, but the whole idea is to move ahead. And most importantly, I think what Vinita has left out is that in your life, do something that you enjoy doing. Because if you don't enjoy doing what you're doing, you'll never be successful. And success is in your hands. And most importantly, while you're at work and pursuing a career, build other interests. Become an all-round personality, because remember that you will have a second innings, and that's the time when that comes in great hand. Vinita is already in that. I'm moving towards that, and I think we become busier in our second innings than we were in our first innings. So ensure that.
I just want to add one other thing, just as a last thought. Somebody asked Amelia Earhart why she loves to fly. And, her answer has been so inspiring for me. And she said that when you're 30,000 feet up there, what you see are horizons, not boundaries.
I think that sums it up. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for Vinita Bali and all our 8 panelists. You've been a great audience. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. And all the best to all of you. Hope to see some of you sitting on this chair some years from now. Good evening. Thank you, Vinita.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Now may I request Mr. Sumit Ray to present a memento to Ms. Vinita Bali. Thank you, sir. I request Mr. Amitabh Datta, former President, CMA, to present a memento to Mr. Sumit Ray for chairing the session. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. May I request the students to please continue to be seated as we begin our next session. Students, I request you to please continue to be seated. Our next speaker is already here. Thank you.
Check, check, check. Check, one, check. Check, check, one, check, test. Check, check. Check. Check, check.
Friends, please be patient. In the next 1 minute, we are just starting. Can we please have complete silence? Can I request you to please be silent?
Check, check.
Thank you.
I request all to please continue to be seated as we begin the next session of the day. We welcome you to the 5th session of the day with Dr. Randeep Guleria, Chairman, Institute of Internal Medicine and Respiratory and Sleep Medicine, Director, Medical Education, Medanta, President, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Bilaspur, and former Director, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, as the speaker, and Mr. Amitabh Datta, immediate former President, Calcutta Management Association, and Director, Calcutta Media Institute, as the session chair. Before we request our dignitaries to be seated on the dais, I would request the student panelists to please be seated on their respective seats on the stage. Now, it is my proud privilege to invite on stage Dr. Randeep Guleria and Mr. Amitabh Datta. Before I hand over the proceedings to Mr. Amitabh Datta, few words about him. Mr. Amitabh Datta is a former president of Calcutta Management Association. Presently, he is the director of Calcutta Media Institute. Mr. Datta retired from ABP Group as president, was associated with the group for more than 2 decades. I now hand over the proceedings to Mr. Amitabh Datta and request him to introduce the speaker, Dr. Randeep Guleria, and take the program forward. Thank you.
As we come to the last session of today's program, it's my very proud privilege to introduce Dr. Randeep Guleria, who has been in a leadership role in managing COVID in India. And I mean, who better to talk to us today than him? Dr. Guleria is the chairman of the Institute of Internal Medicine and Respiratory and Sleep Medicine and director of the Medical Education at Medanta. Prior to this, he was leading AIMS, New Delhi, as director for around 5.5 years. He is the former professor and head of pulmonary medicine and sleep disorders at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. He was the recipient of the prestigious Padma Shri in 2015 in the field of medicine. He has been awarded the prestigious BC Roy National Award for Eminent Medical Person of the Year 2014 and the Lung India Award for the Best Original Article in Lung India by the Indian Chest Society in 2014. He has been awarded Doctor of Science by IIT Kharagpur and Amity University. He has many other prestigious awards like the Swasth Bharat Samman for Medicine from LIC and ZTV, and the Himachal Gaurav Puraskar and the 22nd Lal Bahadur Shastri National Award for Excellence in 2021. He is also an advisor and consultant to various international and national bodies, including the WHO Geneva and the IAEA Vienna. Please join me in giving a big hand to Mr. Guleria, Dr. Guleria.
Good afternoon. Am I audible? So at the onset, let me take this opportunity to thank AIMA and CMA for inviting me over. It's indeed a pleasure, and thank you for your introduction. I'm not sure where to start because I was told that in the next 20 minutes or so, you should really try and give a story of your life, if I put it that way. And I'll try and give you the story that I have been through as far as my life is concerned and the lessons that I've learned and how you could use them. In the end, probably what I learned as far as COVID-19 was concerned. We'll focus on that also. So I'd like to start by saying that, I come from a small state in the north, which is Himachal Pradesh, which is, and I was born there in a town called Dharamsala. I don't know if you know about it because that's the place where the Dalai Lama also stays. And then my parents moved to Delhi and therefore my schooling was done in New Delhi. If you were to ask me how was I as a student in school, I wouldn't say that I was one of the most brilliant students as far as school was concerned. I was not one of those toppers or doing very well. I was a reasonably good student but not a great bright student who could say that his career would really be something that one would really be proud of. But I think that is what life is all about. You need to really understand that as you evolve, you mature also over a period of time. For me at that point in time, as I grew up, life was all about coming home, doing your homework, studying, and then going out to play and developing other hobbies in terms of trying to be maybe a more rounded human being. But as I grew and as I went to medical school, I think I realized how important it was to really look at a career, and I matured at that point in time. And that's where things started changing. So the first lesson that I think I could give is that it doesn't matter how you have been in the past. It really matters how you really start looking at the future and then shaping yourself no matter in which stage in life you are. It doesn't have to be school, it doesn't have to be college, it can be even later on in life. But once that maturity comes, then you must really get more focused in terms of developing a career. So that's one lesson that I learned early in life. As I started going to medical school and I then went to PGI Chandigarh where I did my MD medicine and then specialized and did a DM in pulmonary and critical care medicine. I was the first person to do a DM in pulmonary and critical care medicine. The other thing I realized was that no matter what profession you take, what you do, the most important thing is to have a passion for what you do. If you enjoy your work, then you can really go on working for hours and you will not feel tired and you will really excel no matter how big the challenge is. So whatever career you choose, whatever specialty you choose or subspecialty you choose in life, first question is that do you really like doing that? Are you passionate about it? Don't go by what people say is more popular, which will give you more salary or which will really make you rise in life or be able to do well. It may be something which doesn't seem very important, but if you have a passion for it, I think that is the key word which will make you really happy. And I had a passion for really medicine. I loved seeing patients. I enjoyed interacting with patients. And the other passion that I had was teaching. I loved teaching students. I could take huge classes and extra classes for them. And that passion drove me to really become a doctor and take up a career in academics. And even while I was in medical school, I was first in PGI Chandigarh as a faculty, and then I joined All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences as a young assistant professor. I enjoyed what I used to do. I used to spend more hours than what was needed, because it really didn't matter to me how long I was working, because I was really it was more like a hobby and a passion rather than a work which was stressful. So I could sit in the outpatient department. I would sometimes sit at 8:39 and see patients till 6 or 7 in the evening with just about half an hour lunch break, and that was it. And I would still not feel tired in the evening because it was something that I liked. Same was true for teaching. There were students, postgraduate students, who would ring me up at 6 in the morning and say, "Sir, there is a very nice case that I've seen. Can we have a bedside discussion on this case?" And I would agree, and I would reach the hospital at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we would discuss the case before going to the OPD. So teaching was something that I really enjoyed, and sometimes spent a lot of time teaching without realizing how time had gone by. Much to the disdain of my family, if I put it that way, because it really meant that I used to come home late by taking the extra classes. But I think that is the other thing that I would like to really point out, that you should have a passion for what you do. And if you do that well, then you will really excel in life. And as was said by Ms. Bali, you should not look for really the success that you want. You should look for doing something well. Success will tend to follow. And this is what happened. I was working, I was seeing patients. I got selected for a fellowship in the UK. I went and spent some time in London at the Royal Brompton Hospital, came back and continued my passion for looking after patients, and therefore developed maybe a name for myself. And then in 1998, I was called by one of the very senior professors at that point in time. I was just a junior faculty, that that there is a need for you to become to look after VIP patients. And I refused to look after VIP patient because I felt that would take a lot of my time. But I was told by my head of the department, this is something that you should do. I didn't know who that patient was, so finally I agreed. And then one fine day I got a letter that I have been appointed as personal physician to the Prime Minister of India, that was Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So I started looking after him from 1998 to 2004 while he was the Prime Minister. Learned a lot from him, traveled with him throughout the world and also to various rallies, because that was part of the job. And I balanced my clinical part with this new responsibility that I had, and developed a huge respect for him and continued to see him till the very end, even when he had demitted office. So the other thing that I would like to say is that if you work hard, things will just come into you will fall into place. The third message that I think I would like to give is that one should really remember that life is a roller coaster. You can have ups and downs. And that's what you see in your life. You have your ups, you have your downs. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. But if they don't work out, you learn from that and you move on. And you always keep that in mind, that there will always be an up if there is a down. And gradually things will change. I got involved then in setting up our department. AIIMS did not have a department of respiratory diseases or pulmonary medicine. It was part of the Department of Medicine. So I started doing that. And then we set up a department. Again, it was something which was not part of my primary skill. I was, like I said, I enjoyed clinical work. Setting up a department meant a lot of administrative work. And we had to find space, we had to build a department. So I would even interact with the engineers to decide where should the AC be, how should the ICU be planned, where should be the points for the oxygen point or the point for suction, or where should we have various devices, monitors. All of that meant that you had to read and continue to evolve. But that was something that one did as you sort of matured and started looking at more and more responsibilities. And then in 2017, I got appointed as the Director and CEO of the All Institute of Medical Sciences, and that was another responsibility which was more administrative. And for some time, I had to really decrease my clinical work, my research work, and become more and more involved in trying to take AIIMS into a new level. The trinity of mission of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences is academics, research, and patient care. So although a lot is focused on patient care, we have a huge number of undergraduates, postgraduate students, postdoctoral students, DM, MCS students, PhD students, and AIIMS brings out the largest number of medical publications, research publications, as far as the medical field is concerned. We're second, if you look at the whole group, we're second only to the Indian Institute of Science. So a lot of good research is also done at AIIMS, which is never highlighted. And we now have a lot of collaborations with IITs and other institutes to really look at how we can develop or promote startups and new research as far as the All India Institute of Medical Sciences is concerned. But then something happened which became even became a bigger challenge, if I may put it that way. And that was that in the December of 2019, there was a report of an outbreak of a viral infection, respiratory viral infection, occurring in Wuhan area of China. And at that point in time, we didn't know what it was. But on the 31st of December 2020, we had 3 individuals who came from China, 3 students who came from China and went to Kerala, who tested positive for COVID-19. And there was this huge issue of a pandemic which was right at the horizon. Now when this happened and we had the first lockdown in March of that year, we were not sure how we should prepare for the pandemic. And during the lockdown, what we noticed was that the trauma cases had come down because there was no traffic on the road. And then I thought maybe it's a good idea to convert a trauma center into a COVID hospital. And we did that. We converted part of our trauma center into a COVID hospital. We built an ICU. It was a big challenge because you are converting a hospital into now an infection control area. So you have to have different ventilation. You can't have the same ventilation or AC which goes into the ward and goes into the COVID area because there can be spread of infection. Similarly, the entrance for patients has to be different. You can't have a trauma patient coming from the same door as a COVID positive patient. So separate entrance, separate area for donning, doffing. That was the time that there was a lot of scare also. So all the staff said that they want to have a proper area for disinfection. So taking off your PPEs, after that we built shower areas so that they could have a bath, then change into their normal clothes and go home, or if they wanted to stay on at the hospital, stay on there. So when we did all of this, a lot of people came to me and said that, it's not going to be a huge pandemic. Indians are more stronger and we will not have severe cases. It will be like a common cold. And therefore, you should not really make such a lot of preparation as far as the pandemic is concerned. But I think that is the other lesson that I learned, that you should prepare for the unexpected. And by doing that, we were able to manage a huge load of cases when they came. Initially, when we made all these arrangements, we had very few cases who came. And I remember one time there were only 5 patients, and I was wondering, I've made this whole big hospital into a COVID area, but there are only 5 patients. But gradually from that trickle, it became a huge wave. And during the second wave, we had created 1,700 beds, and we still ran out of beds. And that was the huge challenge that we have. So prepare for the unexpected in life. I think that is another lesson that I learned at that point in time, that you should really keep thinking of what may not happen and be ready for that. The other important thing that I learned at that point in time is that you have to have teamwork. You have to involve everyone when you have an outbreak like this. For more than 2 years, every day in the morning, first in our boardroom and then in an auditorium bigger than this auditorium, I would have a meeting with the entire group. That was a meeting at 8:30 every day in the morning, where we would have our faculty, our resident doctors, our nursing staffs, our OT technicians, even the security guard would come, and we would talk about the challenges that we faced, how things worked, things did not work, and every person there would come up and give suggestions. It could be just the technician who would say that, you know, that area is not proper, that there's a problem in this area. Or a resident doctor who would come and say, you know, that our duty shifts are not working properly. Or even we had the nursing staff that said that, you know, our hours are odd and we need to have extra or private buses to support us to come and go to the hospital. But that really did two things. One is we were able to work as a team and everyone felt that they were involved. And secondly, we got innovative ideas from different people. And they really helped in finding solutions. Simple solutions. You may not even think they were a problem. When doctors were going into the COVID ward, they would wear goggles so that the infection would not go into their eyes. But the goggles would have fogging in them, and that would create a problem that they were not able to see properly, especially if they were doing some procedure, because the goggles would get all fog inside them and the vision would become less. And therefore, people came out with a lot of innovative ideas. One of our doctors even put in a small fan which was battery operated, and that would sort of keep the mist from, not allow the mist to form. Then we had a time when we thought there was going to be shortage of PPEs. We would run out of personal protection equipment because all of the PPEs were coming from China, and because of the pandemic there was no import happening of personal protection equipment. The gowns were not available, the N95 masks were not available. Again, in one of those meetings, we got this idea that why don't we recycle PPEs? So those personal protection equipment which are not torn, we could take them back, we could clean them, hang them, fumigate them properly, and do studies to show that the virus would die by doing this, by if you use enough chemical in that room in terms of fumigation, and then clean it and pack it and recycle it. And we were able to do that. For some time we converted one area into a recycling area for our personal protection equipment, and that was published, and even the WHO has accepted that in its manual that this can be done. Luckily later on we had a lot of our own Indian manufacturers coming in and making personal protection equipment, masks, N95 masks, and we were able to manage that. So I think that is something else that I learned, that you have to be innovative. And whenever you have a challenge, don't think that this cannot be done. There are things that can be done if you really put your mind to it. The other thing that I learned, and I think this is a lesson which is there from the very beginning, all of us are living through a time of change. We are living through a time when technology is coming in a very big way, and what we've learned today will become irrelevant tomorrow. Most of you are young, but I'll tell you that when I was of your age and when I was a student, if I had to, and I was studying as a resident, I was doing my postgraduate studies in PGI Chandigarh, if I had to talk to my parents, I had to go to Sector 17, post office, book a trunk call, wait for 1 hour, and then through a landline trunk call be able to talk to my parents. I could never have imagined that in my generation I would be able to see a device where I could use in the palm of my hand, which would allow me to talk to people across the world, not only talk to them, but see them through FaceTime or through WhatsApp. But this is how technology had changed. And this pace of change has even become faster over the last few years. We are living through what is known as the fourth industrial revolution. And therefore, the most important thing is that we have to continue to learn. So even if you go out after getting your degree, that's not enough. You have to continue to learn new things as life evolves. And that is something which is more important than what you've learned today as far as the future is concerned. So continue to learn, I think, is the most other very, very important message, that you must not only continue to learn in your own areas, but think across, out of the box. There is a lot of interconnectivity which is happening because of technology. And therefore, it's very, very important for you not only to be focused in your own area, but start looking at other areas which may be of interest and which may actually merge in the near future. Finally, what I learned during COVID-19, and I think this is something all of us learned, that it's important to stay healthy, both physically and mentally. We saw a lot of issues of mental health because of loneliness, because of the lockdown. We saw a lot of issues of illness because of the pandemic. And therefore, I think preventive health is more important than actually curative health. So if you take care of yourself in terms of your diet, in terms of exercise, in terms of interacting with others, and as was mentioned by Ms. Bali, taking up a hobby, doing something else, you will be healthy both physically and mentally, and that will actually increase your output and you will become more productive. So I think these are the lessons that I learned during my life, and I hope they would be useful to you as you move into a new phase in your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Guleria, for the sharing with all of us here your journey of life till now. And what an exciting life you've had. And the most interesting part is that you enjoyed what you're doing. So your profession was not really just a work per se. It was something that you enjoyed doing. And that's why you're successful in what you're doing. And your empathy towards your patient, I think it starts off with that. And the moment you're able to do that, I think you reach a different level altogether. And the way you handled, I mean, you've been very modest, but then you have handled the COVID crisis not only for your institute or at your institute, but across the country. Because you're a role model for the rest of the country as well. And one of the reasons why we possibly were able to contain COVID, and we had less fatalities than it was predicted, was because of the work done by people like you and your team at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Plus, what I particularly like, and that is something that I've learned from my life as well, is the whole aspect of teamwork. Being able to get along with the team. And you were able to lead a whole team and they swore by you because you took them into confidence. The other thing that I liked also was that, you can learn from anybody and everybody. Irrespective of whether he's a very senior person or a junior person, even the junior most person can at times come up with ideas which are so innovative, so interesting. And today, for example, I learned from my granddaughter because she knows a lot of things about technology which I don't know. So one has to be willing to admit that I don't know and try and get that information from whichever source that you have. So anyway, thank you, Dr. Guleria. I think it was fantastic. I'll just now turn to the panelists on the stage. If I can start with my left, and then we sort of move from here.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Aditya Ghosh. I am from NSHM Knowledge Campus, Kolkata. It's really an honor to have you with us. So, sir, my question is, you must have faced challenges in circumstances, situation while attending the patients. Maybe they are mentally disordered and anything. So, by dictating them that what you do in their situation or minimizing their experience or avoiding them, how you treat them in those situations?
So I think as a clinician, you have a big challenge of how do you manage patients in a situation where not only the patient, the attendants are very worried of a severe illness or an illness which could be fatal. And empathy is very important. You have to connect with your patients. If you have to understand, and I often tell my students, put yourself in their shoes and see and consider the anxiety that they're going through. someone who comes to a hospital with a relative is so concerned that there may be cancer, the patient may die, and that is why sometimes you need to allay those fears, you need to talk to them, and that is why the more important thing that I keep saying is that medicine is both a science and an art. The science of medicine has made huge progress. We now have technology which we never thought we could, we would have robotics, PET scan, MRI, so many new things have come in. We're talking of stem cell, regenerative medicine. But despite all those science, the art of medicine is also very important because the patient is a human being with feelings. And therefore you have to have empathy, you have to be able to connect with the patient. And if you're able to do that, I think your patient will get better faster and he will also be able to understand the problem that he's facing, and that will bring down his anxiety levels. So interacting with the patient, having empathy with the patient, and actually being able to understand the art of medicine is what it's all about.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Vipul Singh and I am from JIS University. First of all, it's an honor and privilege to share the stage with you. Coming to the question, sir, nowadays we are witnessing such an intense competition in medical examinations like NEET and another government college examinations. So, and the NEET cutoff is also increasing substantially year by year. So, sir, being the former director of AIMS, you must be aware of the mental pressure and trauma that a medical aspirant goes through. So, sir, according to you, what are the solutions that should be implemented to improve the medical education system in India? Thank you, sir.
So it's a very important question because, as you rightly said, the exams, NEET exam creates a lot of anxiety. Students sometimes go into depression if they don't clear through the exam. I think we need to develop a graded system so that it's not only one exam, but it's an assessment over a period of time, which allows students to also improve as they go along. And the government already realizes that there is a need and aspiration from students of taking up medicine. So more and more seats are being added, more and more medical colleges are being opened up so that the more and more students can take up medicine as a profession. So I think it's important that we develop a strategy. Currently, the exam is just one-time exam, either you clear it or you don't clear it, and then you have to appear again after a year. So we need to look at a graded mechanism. We did work on it before. While I was director, I was also a member of the Board of Governors of the Medical Council of India. All of these things one was looking at. How can we make the exam also, structure the exam in a way that it is more problem oriented rather than just mugging up things. But I think it's an important issue of how do we really start conducting exams which are more student based and friendly for students rather than more stressful for students. That needs to be done at all levels.
Thank you very much, sir, for your answer.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Randeep Bali from NSHM Knowledge Campus. Thank you for having us here and for such an enlightening session. Sir, there has been an increase in heart attacks recently and severe respiratory problems. So is it because of the post-COVID situation? I'd like to know your views on that, or any researches are being conducted on that topic.
So there is a lot of interest whether long COVID or post-COVID, because COVID also causes blood clotting and leads to what we call hypercoagulable state. Does that lead to a higher chance of younger people having heart attacks and sudden deaths are occurring because of that? A lot of research is going on, but I don't think we have conclusive data to say that this is a cause and effect, that the cause of all of this is because of COVID. It also could be more increased awareness. The other important thing to remember is that over the last few decades, there has been a change in our burden of disease. From communicable diseases, infections, the burden of disease in India has shifted gradually to non-communicable diseases. And somewhere around 2005, 2006, the bulk of, or the burden of disease, the majority of burden of disease was non-communicable diseases. Heart diseases, cancer, chronic respiratory diseases, neurological disorders, they form a larger burden than infections like tuberculosis, malaria, diarrhea, and that all of these are lifestyle related diseases. So to really decrease this burden, we have to improve our lifestyle, whether it be our diet, whether it be exercise, all of those things have to improve, whether it be simple things like air pollution. Pollution, diet, exercise, all are contributing to this increasing burden of non-communicable disease, and one of them is heart-related diseases.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Souvik Saw from Institute of Engineering and Management. My question is, according to you, which things government hospitals and private hospitals should learn from each other to enhancing the healthcare services in our country?
So I think there has to be a good government and private hospital partnership. The challenge is the private hospitals will work only where they are able to see a good margin. So the government has to look at areas where it can provide services where private sector will not go in. That is one. So if you have areas like preventive health, if you have areas which is looking at community-based services, where the returns may not be that much, government should actually put in more into money into that. But at the same time, I think both private and public sectors should look at how can we work on decreasing the cost of healthcare. The cost of healthcare has become tremendous. And that's because we've moved from what was traditionally, during my time, clinical medicine, to now what is more and more investigative medicine. So you see a patient, you don't examine the patient as you should, you write a whole page of investigations. That also needs to evolve and change, both in the government and private sector, so that you are able to treat the patient in a cost-effective manner and provide the best care, rather than writing 10, 15 tests that the patient should do before you start treatment. So the government sector has to work in that, the private sector has to work in that, in bringing down the cost. And also there has to be work in terms of how do you distribute healthcare so that both sides benefit and ultimately it is patient-centric.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Soumik Ghosh from Future Institute of Engineering and Management. Sir, can you kindly tell us one success mantra that from your experience to the youngsters to achieve their milestones?
So I think the one success mantra that, or maybe more than one success mantra, one is of course that, like I mentioned, you have a passion for what you do. You should enjoy what you're doing. The work that you're doing should not become a burden that you are just looking at the watch and saying that when is it going to be 5 p.m. and when can I leave my work and office and go home. You should be passionate about what you do. If you enjoy your work, you will succeed and you will find that things are much more comfortable. That is the most important thing. And like I said, while you work, it's very important to stay healthy both physically and mentally, because that will also be affecting your productivity in the long run.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Tanmoy Roy. I am from Institute of Engineering Management. Sir, my question to you, sir, could you please share a memorable moment while you have experienced while you serving as a physician?
So there are many memorable moments. The most memorable moments you have is when your patient recovers and you find a smile on the face of the patient, irrespective of whether the patient is from a rich background or a poor background. And sometimes I think it's more satisfying if you're treating a patient who's from a poor background. The happiness that the patient has when he or she becomes all right is really remarkable. And that really makes you happy that you've chosen the right profession, and you really feel a huge sense of satisfaction, which is more than what anything money can buy.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Pramita Ghosh from Future Institute of Engineering and Management. My question to you is, sir, today we have all gathered over here talking about shaping youth mind. So during pandemic, we have seen that the number of cases for insomnia has risen drastically. So what are the probable causes for the insomnia? And if you could throw some light on it, that how can we prevent it, especially among youth, that is taking place? Thank you, sir.
So very right. Insomnia and sleep disorders have increased tremendously over the last few decades. A lot of it is related to our lifestyle. And if you look at lifestyle of today, it evolved actually from what started as a call center culture, that people would work in the night because of varying time zones. And then a lot of now young generation actually have no time, they don't tell you what time they go to sleep. It could vary from 12 midnight to 3 or 4 in the morning. And therefore sleep hygiene is very, very important, to have a regular sleeping habit and develop a good sleep hygiene. It is good for the mind, it's good for the body. Also there is data which suggests that as humans, we are sleeping less and less over each decade. So if we were sleeping 8 hours in a day 20-25 years ago, it's come down to almost 5 to 6 hours. So we are becoming a sleep-deprived society, and that is also contributing to insomnia. So I would really say that, like I said, lifestyle modification, good sleep hygiene, sleeping at least 7 hours a day is very, very important, and we must continue to do that, not have irregular sleep habits. That drives insomnia, that is leading to a lot of stress-related issues, and that is very, very important to keep in mind.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. First of all, thank you for being here with us and sharing those beautiful stories with us. Sir, my name is Sagar De. I am from Future Institute of Engineering and Management. Sir, you have a very hectic work schedule, and your work has been very well appreciated, including receiving the prestigious Padma Shri. Sir, how do you manage your work? And sir, any advice for us youngsters to utilize our time in an effective way?
So I think what you need to do is have a good balance between work, what you like to do as a hobby, if you have one, and exercise. So you must develop a good balance between that. If you like your work, you can work for hours, but when you have time off, you must do some exercise. It could be simple yoga, it could be going for a jog or for a walk. That helps to de-stress you and also keeps you physically fit. And if you have a hobby, it could be listening to music. You spend just some time listening to music, it again helps to de-stress you. Watching a movie, I enjoy reading fiction books, so that helps me, and sometimes I would stay awake the whole night trying to finish the book. So that itself is also something which tries to de-stress you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Dr. Guleria, but I think we have a little bit of time. So in case we have any questions from the audience, maybe 2 or 3 questions. Anybody would want to ask a question? Can you see somebody? Sorry? Yeah.
First row.
Yeah. Madam, please.
A very good evening, sir. Thank you for enriching us with your words. I am Anvesha Chatterjee from the Department of Human Resource Management of IISWBM. So I have a slight different question. So now we are moving into the digital and virtual world, and robotic engineering are being used in surgeries also for minimizing the tedious work of the surgeons. So what are your point of views regarding this? As in, there are a lot of hartas that happen if any kind of mishap happens by the doctors during any surgery. So with instruments, it has a much more impact if the instruments get malfunctioned. So what are your views on that?
So I think when we're looking at medicine, whenever you look at devices, they have to be foolproof. You can't have a ventilator which stops functioning in the middle of the night and the patient dies because of that. Similarly, the surgery has to be done so that there are a lot of, if you use a robotic device, there has to be a lot of checks and balances and backups available so that it works, and if there is something which goes wrong, it's able to correct that. But I think the future is going to be in terms of technology coming into medicine in a big way. We already are seeing that it's not only in surgery, it's also in a large number of monitoring devices. We have wearable and non-wearable devices. A lot of watches that you wear can tell you your ECG, can tell you your heart rate, can tell you your sleep. And this will become how medicine is going to be, that a lot of devices will be there which will help you to monitor your patients. Similarly, surgeries will become more and more minimally invasive using technology, but it has to be fail-safe, and that is what is really required when we move forward. But technology is going to come into a big way, both in terms of monitoring, in terms of procedures, and also in terms of point-of-care diagnostics. You could be able to diagnose things much faster and much more earlier than what we're doing right now. The only challenge is that we need to make sure that this doesn't increase the cost of healthcare. So we have to have frugal innovation. How can we innovate so that it is of high quality but cost effective? And I feel that the right place to do that is our country. India has a huge scope of frugal innovation with people of different areas in the young generation really wanting to become entrepreneurs and have startups. And I think that is something that we should encourage.
Thank you so much, sir.
There's a lady in the front row. Can somebody give her the mic, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shachishmata Mukhopadhyay from Human Resource Management Department of IAS My question for you is, over the years, since medicine is a long-lasting field, the role of management has evolved, especially now that everything has become digitalized and globalized. So what kind of impact has it created, and what kind of challenges are we currently facing that we would, and what kind of challenge we might face in the next couple of years, couple of decades actually?
So if you're talking of management, I do agree that this is creating an issue because a lot of health professionals who become senior have no real training on management or other health, let's say HR related issues. And you have to learn, like I said, as you go doing your other clinical work. Now most institutes have a Department of Hospital Administration. There is an MD course also in hospital administration to really try and help run the hospital and look at hospital administration as a specialty. But as technology moves in, as you have, you have electronic medical records and a lot of things coming in, this will become part of some sort of a course in undergraduate teaching also in terms of skill development. And I think that is also something which is very, very important.
Yeah, the first row, please. The first row.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Dr. Bobby Basu, faculty member from Heritage Business School. Sir, my question is, we all know that generic medicines are much cheaper than your branded medicines. So do you think is there any difference between generic medicines and branded medicines in terms of quality?
So when I looked at this, and I've been involved in this for many years, I've actually divided into 3 groups. One is patented medicines, which have a patent. The other are generics which are made by companies which are of good quality. You could call them, say, companies which are having plants which are internationally approved and which they are exporting. And third is generics where we are not sure of the quality which is concerned. So generics are very useful as long as there is a good quality assurance. The second group that I mentioned, one is finding that these are generics, but they are manufactured in plants which have a quality assurance, and they are the ones that one would easily recommend because they are cost effective, they're much cheaper, they're made in our country, and there are some drugs which can be used without worrying that the efficacy may be less. But then you have certain other products which are made because of approvals being given by state DCGI, where you're not sure whether they are actually having good quality control, because many of them are, manufactured in 1-room or 2-room manufacturing plants where the state DCGI has given them approval. Those are the ones that one would really want to avoid.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I think we have, one question there.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Ishita Banerjee from
Can't hear you.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Ishita Banerjee from NSHM Knowledge Campus, Kolkata, sir. I am a student of Masters in Hospital Management, sir. So, as a veteran in the healthcare field, sir, what are your views on the current employability chances of the people of the non-medical background, sir?
What are the chances for?
Employability of the staffs who are the non-medical backgrounds.
In hospital administration?
Yes, sir, Masters, sir.
So there is a huge scope for developing hospital administration even in people who are of a non-medical background, but who come from a background which is more into administration, or let's say into other skills like marketing or management. So those are issues which are not taught as far as medicine is concerned. And most hospitals are looking for these skills in terms of managing the hospital per se or the institute per se. And very often doctors have to start doing that work, which I think is not an efficient way of doing things. So there's a lot of scope for people who are non-medical but have specialization in these areas to interact with doctors and therefore be able to provide better care, which is of good quality, cost effective, and maybe actually beneficial in the long run as far as the hospital is concerned.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
So I think we've come to the end of our session. I personally have benefited tremendously from
One question, one hand.
Is there anybody else? Where?
There's some hand at the back.
Okay. We just have about for one more question.
Good afternoon, sir, and everybody present here. My name is Prerna Gupta. I am from the Bhawanipur Education Society. My question is that how can we make healthcare more affordable and accessible?
So that's a very good question. It's a big challenge. There are multiple ways that one can look at it. One would be to see how we can develop a good, robust insurance system that every citizen of the country has an insurance, and therefore healthcare is taken care of by the insurance system or by the state itself. Many countries in Europe or in the UK, for example, you have the NHS system where health is provided by the state and the patient doesn't have to pay for it because it is a right of the patient to get good quality health care without having to pay anything. In certain states, it's becomes part of what is taxed, and the taxpayers' money is then used to provide free health care. So you could look at nationalizing health care, you could look at various other models, but it has to be implemented so that all stakeholders, including corporate hospitals, government hospitals, nursing homes, all become part of that system. So it's a big challenge, but I think that is something that needs to be done.
Thank you, sir.
There's the last question. Somebody right at the top.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
My name is Soumya Verma. I am from BCom Honors. Sir, my question for today is how to be consistent in our work.
So to be consistent, you have to have faith in yourself, and you should not lose your faith when your things are down, and not become overconfident when things are up. And if you don't have those two things harming you, then you will be consistent in your activities. Sometimes if you're down, you feel that nothing is going to work for you and you lose your sort of sustainability and ability to be consistent. And sometimes if you're very high and you think now everything is all right, again you lose focus. So if you are able to maintain that, I think you will be consistent and you will be able to sustain things in life.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think we close the session. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Guleria, on behalf of the All India Management Association and the Calcutta Management Association. I think we should give a big round of applause to Dr. Guleria for his excellent.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you so much, sir. Now may I request Mr. Amitabh Dotto to present a memento to Dr. Randeep Guleria. Thank you so much, sir. I request Mr. Sanjay Groover, Director, IMA, to present a memento to Mr. Amitabh Dotto for chairing the session. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the session of the Shaping Young Minds program. May I request Mr. Amitabh Dotto, Calcutta Management Association, to deliver the vote of thanks.
On behalf of AIMA and the Calcutta Management Association, I would like to propose a vote of thanks for everybody who has been involved with this program. A special vote of thanks to all the speakers, Mr. Srinivas Dempo, Mr. Shiv Kumar, Mr. Aditya Ghosh, Ms. Vinita Bali, and Dr. Randeep Guleria. I would also like to extend our thanks to the past presidents of the Calcutta Management Association who moderated the sessions, Mr. T.V.S. Shanoy, Madhumita Basu, Dhruva Mukherjee, Shumit Ray. A very special word of thanks to all at the IIM Calcutta, Professor Uttam Kumar Sarkar, Director IIMC, Professor Bhaskar Chakravarti, Dean Academics IIMC, Sri Alok Chandra, Chief Administrative Officer IIMC, Mr. Amitav Bhaduri, Senior Administrative Officer IIMC, Mr. Zulfikar Hassan, Senior Administrative Officer ENM IIMC, Mr. Amarendranath Dey, Estate Maintenance Department IIMC. I would also like to thank our generous supporters and sponsors, CSA Limited, Exide, Tanera, The Telegraph, the 91.9 FM, NSHM Business School, Sister Nivedita University, AIIM Kolkata, Future Business School, IEM, IISWBM, Heritage Business School, GIS, Vitasya, Squash Court, and Wow Momo. And thank you all for being a wonderful, wonderful audience. Thank you very much and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Students, may I request just one more minute? Just one more minute. A few people I would like to thank on behalf of Calcutta Management Association, which, without doing which, it doesn't really. The first thing is for our Master of Ceremonies today, Ridhima, we would like to thank on behalf of all of us for taking this session. Ridhima, please come on the stage. Probal sir, Professor Probal Roy, Senior Faculty and XLRI Dean. May I request him to kindly hand over a memento to Probal sir. The volunteers and panelists, could you please stand where you are? I would like to, wherever you are, the volunteers and panelists. I'll thank you. Just wait a minute. I'm very sorry, Probal Sen. Probably I was a little more. Sir, if you could. Thanks to Ridhima for all the. She represents CMA, of course, CMA and AIMA today, but she is from Heritage Business School. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Sen. And next, without thanking whom we cannot have SYMP. May I request Sanjay Grover sir to please come on stage, and may I request Mr. Amitav Datta to kindly give a memento to Mr. Sanjay Grover, Director of All India Management Association.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Center is Subi. Subi ne center is Subi. One picture, sir. I know you are growing. There is tea and biscuits outside. Someone was asking about tea in the morning. You know, it's Calcutta. It was raining that time. I could have given then, but I thought I'll wait for some time. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot to AIMA. Thanks a lot to everyone. And I would like to thank the whole team of the volunteers and the panelists who have done a great job today. They are standing here. It's a huge team. I cannot bring them on stage. So it's a brilliant job they have done. Thanks to your team. And the last one, Anubhav, he has been at the backstage. Why are you there? He's at the backstage and he's the backbone of the event. Thanks to all of them. Last thing, for which I know that you have got the content, but on the screen may I have a QR code. There is a QR code and a link. Please take down the link. Please fill in the feedback form, and we'll send you the certificates on your email ID in a week's time. This is for the participants. Please take it down. You can scan it. You can write it down. It will be here on stage, on the screen for 30 seconds. And finally, the volunteers and panelists, please be here. Others, thanks a lot for coming. Yes, oh, yes. Just one, it's a advice. All the students, please don't move around. Please board your vehicles, or if you're walking, please go straight to the exit gate. Please do not move around, because it's, I have got from the authorities of the AIIMS Calcutta, I have been given this instruction. It's a request and an advice, don't take a D route here and there. Thanks to all of you.